Muhami Matters with Chris Adams, powered by CJA Consulting.
And over 4 decades, I've had a variety of life experiences that include a fatherless childhood, calling off my wedding 1 month before I was supposed to get married in Santorini, being a single father, and moving to Dubai with no safety nets and no ready-made network. So courage is what gets you moving, right? It's the ignition. But consistency, that's what builds the freedom. It's the engine.
I do think that there is definitely a difference between men and women, letting emotions rule over rationality and vice versa.
Real strength begins when the mask drops, because courage isn't pretending to have it all together. It's being honest enough to say, I don't know right now.
What patterns have you seen amongst the men that you worked with, particularly fathers?
Self-care is healthcare, because if you're not at your best performance for yourself, how are you going to perform for others?
Welcome to Muhami Matters, where credibility meets clarity in legal and professional services. I'm your host, Chris Adams, founder of Muhami and CJA Consulting. Today's conversation is going to be a little bit different. We're exploring fatherhood, courage, and the weight of professional responsibility through the story of someone who's walked that road. Westley Harnett is the founder of Satorus, where he guides fathers and founders through some of life's hardest transitions. And his mantra says it all: choose a hard truth today over a slow betrayal tomorrow. Wesley, welcome to Muhami Matters. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure. And a fantastic intro.
We're going to have to explore that mantra a bit. But first, let's get started just by introducing yourself. For those who don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself and how you came to land in the UAE.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm officially still a newbie in Dubai. I've been called many different things, but newbie is the one that seems to be sticking. So been here 7 months now. But I'm not a newbie to business and life. I've spent 26 years building and scaling businesses in the UK. And over 4 decades, I've had a variety of life experiences that include a fatherless childhood, calling off my wedding 1 month before I was supposed to get married in Santorini, being a single father for the last 10 years of my life to a 14-year-old son. His name is Hayden. And moving to Dubai with no safety nets and no ready-made network. So, you know, it's I'm now using all of that experience, knowledge, know-how, and I'm now business and life coach, bringing my wealth of experience or business acumen, life experience to help serve and guide others. And I found that it's, you know, what I'm doing now is a natural progression of the journey that I've been in. Mm-hmm. You know, utilizing my wounds, utilizing my pain, and to be able to help businesses, founders, fathers gain clarity, act with courage, and build freedom in the businesses that they build and the lives that they live.
So you definitely had some experiences, well, 3 experiences there that hopefully none of us would wish to have to experience, I suppose. You've had all 3. So yeah, which of those, tell us a bit more. So you grew up, as you said, without parents.
Yes. Well, let me expand on that one first, if you want. So, I mean, like all through my life, I've had to choose courage over comfort. You know, it's definitely been a recurring theme time and time again in my life. And I would say that the first time that happened was at the age of 14. Mm-hmm. So at 14 years old, I got sat down in the front room. My mum and dad were sitting in front of me, and I got asked the question that I don't think any 14-year-old would want to get asked, and that is, we're getting a divorce, and you need to choose who you want to live with. I had a kind of a moment of clarity, let's call it. You know, I was close to my dad. But you know, various things had happened in the family, and I knew that if I chose my dad, it would go one path. So you know, basically after a very short amount of time, probably seconds, I chose to live with my mum. And in that moment, that choice, my dad got up, he walked out, didn't say a word, and that was the last time I ever saw or spoke to him again. And that was 33 years ago.
My goodness.
So, you know, from a very young age, I've had to kind of deal with this courage aspect. And that's kind of then leads on to the others that I spoke about. When I was 33, 32, I think it was, when, calling off my wedding a month before it was supposed to happen, and making that decision at a funeral. And again, a moment of clarity, realization that I wasn't getting married out of love. I was getting married out of a lack of what had happened to me previously, a lack of, not having a family, or a burning desire to want to have a family and keep a family together and build a family because of what happened to me when I was young. So, that kind of rolled into that one. And then obviously the fallout from calling the wedding off was becoming a single father. His mother, during the sort of process of proceedings of custody, making a decision that she didn't want to be a present mother anymore, and made the decision to move back to her home country in Europe. And literally overnight, I became a single father. And I was a founder of a growing business at that time as well. And not really having a family around of my own, so to speak. I'm fairly distant from my mum. My dad's obviously not around, and I don't really have any other family. So I have a brother, but he moved to Germany many years ago. So, for me, it was, it was a kind of a non-negotiable. It was out of necessity. I have to deal with things. I have to have the courage to be able to overcome these challenges that are sent my way. So yeah, a lot to unpack there.
There is, and I have to confess, I try to work on my EQ, but I'm probably not as as EQ as people could be, probably because I work with lawyers so much. But do you feel courageous straight away when your dad walked out? I mean, I personally would just be in shock. I think that would probably be what I'd imagine I would do. How did you feel?
It's really interesting because at that time, it was as though I had a moment of clarity, all right? And, I didn't have a lot of time to think about it. I was put in not an awkward position, but I was put in a position that I had to make a decision. That was what I felt. And it was as though I just had this clarity and calmness talk to me. And I suppose I was probably computing and digesting a lot of information. My dad was quite violent. He had run-ins with the law, and I suppose there was this computing of information of, if I went one route, if I lived with my dad, I think my life would have gone a different trajectory. And I could have potentially ended up not potentially, I probably would have ended up a different person. So I suppose there was that thought. And even at this tender age, that was what was going through my mind. And if I'm honest, my mum and my brother were very close, and they were sitting there to my right. I remember it as though it was yesterday. They were sitting there to my right. And I remember, kind of the eyes on me as well, like, what's he going to decide? Who's he going to choose? What is the right choice to make? And I suppose there were all of these aspects that were going through my mind. And it was a kind of intuitive gut, but also having, kind of computed and digested the information that I knew. And then it was a decision that I was like, right, that's what I need to do. And look, and I think that has definitely stood me in terms of making decisions, making decisive, and I call it, decisive decisions. That's what I call it. Non-negotiable, decisive decision. And that's the courage, right? That's the moment of decision. This is what I'm going to do. And I've computed an element of information. I've utilized my gut to an element of degree as well. And now I'm going to make that decision. And then I'm going to make the consistent steps after that of rebuilding and continuing with my life. And, my dad has never reached out to me. And admittedly, I've never reached out to him, but he is the father. And I've never really had any urge to reach out. So, that's kind of where I was at with it. And, Yeah, look, for me, it's my life. So it was a courageous decision, even at that tender age. But what it has done is you stack those courageous decisions up, and then you become very you become very strong with making them. Because a lot of people, like you mentioned earlier, would be emotionally would be probably very beat up by it, and I'm not saying I wasn't. And there probably were knock-on effects, in terms of my late teens and probably early 20s. And going through my 20s, an element of knock-on effect associated with it. But ultimately, that was my first probably large courageous decision that I made.
So you went to live with your mother. Life carried
Yes.
on. You went to school.
Yes.
How do you think, fast forwarding through to the wedding situation, maybe you can tell us a bit more about how that came about and what led you to making another courageous decision, and it sounds like another quite quick decision as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, probably not quick, actually. Quick when I made the decision, but it was a build up to it. So yeah, like you said, went through and was probably carrying an element of burden of broken family, but I honestly don't think it affected me too much. But that's potentially it did subconsciously. But I know that coming into the kind of the wedding or the proposing or having a child. So we had Hayden very quickly. We were together 6 months, and then Hayden, and then my girlfriend then became pregnant, and so it was quite quick. I wouldn't say we knew each other 100%, but obviously, beautiful baby boy was born and my blessing. And then, after that, I suppose the cracks started to appear slightly. And for me, it's very much about, and I've said this quite a lot, and something I coach actually is very much about values, right? With two people, you've got to have strong values between those two people, because that's what you fall back on. And if you have strong values, if you have similar mindset, traits, you can be different, right? But it's down to values. And I think they have to align. And for me, quite early on, I think I recognized that those values weren't there. But on the flip side, I had this burning desire to want to keep a family together. Obviously, I'd been through a couple of relationships before that, but being in this and obviously having a child that, that and coming from a fatherless childhood, or having, not knowing my dad from 14, I really wanted to keep that together, to keep that family unit together. And we had actually split up, got back together a number of different times throughout a period, throughout maybe about a 5-year period. And this was me proposing was this last throw at the dice, right? Oh, by proposing and putting a ring on it, we'll suddenly fix it, and we'll all sing, swim off into the distant happy families. But reality that that doesn't happen. The cracks were already there. The depth wasn't there. The values weren't there. I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I was doing it out of lack, not out of love. And, it just happened that I had to go to this funeral a month before the wedding was set in Santorini. 25 people booked, flights booked, venue booked, ring purchased, engagement party done. And then I just went to this funeral. And again, honestly, it was a voice, that same voice that spoke to me when I was 14 was the same voice that spoke to me now. And it said, you can't do this. You're doing this for the wrong reason. And I also came to a realization that if I did do it, it would ultimately cause more pain in the future. And that's why, it's a hard truth today over a slow betrayal tomorrow is kind of quite a strong slogan, so to speak, or mantra, because it really is that. And, and again, to make that call a month before, that is a courageous decision, because it would be very easy just to, I'll just go through with it, right? I'll stay in it and I'll suck it up. And then 1 year leads into 2, 5, 10, 20. And then next thing you know, your life's passed by in a relationship or a marriage that you're not happy with. You're married, living, house, kid, and it becomes harder and harder and harder and harder. And I feel now grateful that I had that clarity, and that I also had that courage to step up and to make that decision, to deal with the fallout, And yes, it was short-term pain, but in my view, long-term gain.
So Hayden was about 5 by this stage.
Correct.
And do you think that decision you made was emotional or rational, or was it the point where I guess rationality overtook emotion?
Yeah, it had to be rationality, right? I had to make that decision there. And then if it went any further, then it would have all gone through and I'd have been living a life. I would have been living someone else's life. And I truly believe that you have to be the architect of your own life. You have to be the designer of your own, just like we design a business. You are the most important you are the most important business that you will ever run in terms of me, you, whoever. And it's super important that you design that with intention. So yes, it was rational. Yes, I knew what I needed to do. Yes, I had this opportunity to do it. And yes, I took it. Like I said, I'm grateful. And you deal with the fallout, right? It's facing up to the facts and it's dealing with that fallout. And stepping in and owning it, but doing the work, not making it out of an emotional state. Yes, emotion comes into it, but it's important to put that aside. And it's kind of a mixture, I would say. There's an element of emotion because your emotions are ultimately talking to you on a consistent basis. A lot of men push emotions down, right? Oh, I don't want to feel that. Oh, let me hide that. Oh, it's not there. And that's part of the challenge. But the emotion is your compass. And you've got to listen to it. You've got to feel it. You've got to let the emotion come through you because that is the direction, right? Not make a decision based on emotion, but definitely feel it and let it speak to you. And then mix that in with rationality, with decisions, with then gut as well, with data. I always say use data-driven decisions. And it's a kind of a balance. It's like life. Life is a balance. It's a delicate dance. And it's important that you kind of merge all of those together, and that's what I feel I did.
And I think we'll explore this a bit more, but I do think that there is definitely a difference between men and women for emotion, letting emotions rule over rationality and vice versa. A lot of men, fathers, professionals who are listening to this are quite rational people, I think, and rationality is higher than emotions because you probably couldn't do what a lot of us do if emotions overruled irrational thinking, because you would either have a lot of people you love and probably a darn lot you'd hate, and you wouldn't have any customers.
It'd be chaos out there.
Yeah.
And I always like using something like I always say kind of sleep on it, respond, don't react. Because a reaction is your initial like emotion, right? And that can be hate, it can be stress, it can be love, and that's great, but sleep on it. One thing I've learned through my vast experience now is in big decisions or any decision is always be empathetic, always listen to others' points of view. And if you're not prepared or you're acting from an emotional stance, then you don't need to make a decision there. Say, let me come back to you on that. It's like, and then go back to the next day. It's like, the age-old story of writing an email. I've had so many clients throughout my years, and some of them have not been of the best caliber, let's call it. And, and it's that they send this really nasty email and your blood's boiling. I'm going to send an email back and I'm going to say this. Write the email, just don't send it. And then come back to it in the morning and look at it. And you will rewrite that email from a place of calmness, of clarity. And I would be an advocate of people to do that because, you're acting from that emotional state rather than a rational stroke emotional state with your business head on, as well as your, what you want to get out of it as well. And what the best thing is, what's a win-win? Always got to look for win-wins in life, right? So that's what I would say.
So in your initial decision to live with your mother over your father, it was pretty instant. When you didn't pursue the wedding, the marriage, how long did you sleep on it for?
Good number of months. If I'm really honest with myself, and I'm having to go back a decade or so now, but I would say it was, I think we got back together and I proposed when we got back together. And then I would say it was probably a month or two. I think it was maybe like 8 months, 10 months until the kind of wedding, or let's call it a year. And I think within a number of months of getting back together, I started to see the cracks again, right? And even at that stage, I was just in that position of, it will be okay. But there was just this voice, and it was scratching away at me, scratching away, saying, and it got to that D-Day, right? A month before, that kind of countdown, I suppose, was probably what it was, that countdown. And then at that stage, I just knew that this was it. Like I built the courage up, and I was coming back, and I felt I've got to do it now. If I don't do it now, I'm not doing it. So that was when it was. So, for me, it had definitely been subconsciously behind. I'd known it for a long time.
Now, obviously, there was not just two people in this picture. There was a little 5-year-old boy, who you obviously care about a lot, and had to think about, and had to think what was best for him. How did you balance your own emotions and rationality versus your son's?
Yeah, it was, and you're right, there is a third, and that was very much the decision around, around wanting to try and keep a family together, right? Like, you want to try and keep a family together, especially if you come from a broken family. It's kind of one of the key things that you want to try and achieve. But look, it's a fine balance, and when I made the decision, it was always about Hayden. Ultimately, it was always about providing an environment, a stable environment, a loving environment, a caring environment, a home, not just a house. And that was very critical. So making sure that it went smoothly, making sure we were both present was super important. And part of that fallout was that when we did split, it was very amicable to begin with. We lived 5 minutes up the road from each other. We shared our time with Hayden, and, it was no real fallout, to be honest. It was, we just moved into a house at that stage as well. So yeah, it was very minimal fallout initially. And only after 6 months when I got blackmailed to say, you need to do X, and I didn't feel it was reasonable. Only at that stage, we needed to kind of go through the courts to be able to come to an amicable agreement outcome. And during that, obviously, she then made a decision to go her way. And then it was very much about providing, again, minimal fallout from my son.
Yes.
My take on that is, look, you have your relationship with your mum ultimately, and I know that he was super young, but it was trying to maintain that kind of relationship. Obviously, I wasn't part of that. At that stage, we had gone our separate ways. But for Hayden, they did talk occasionally, but I provided an environment for my son that meant that he was in a stable, secure, loving home, and that the fallout was very, very minimal. And I can honestly say that, he hasn't had any effect on him. Like, I've done my job to the best of my ability, and I really did step up, and I did wear every hat. I was there as an emotional support figure. I was there as a father figure. I was there as a best friend. I was there as, his confidant. I was there to drop him off to school in the morning. I was there to pick him up. I sacrificed whatever I needed to sacrifice to be there to enable him to have that loving, caring environment that every child needs. And that I had to make up for that, to be able to give that to him, to be able to mitigate any potential damage or fallout that he may potentially feel. And, me and him had a great, have, and will continue to have a very tight-knit, close bond. And I think that was very important for me, because obviously coming from that kind of challenge that I had when I was young with my father, that installed a desire, a knowing, a non-negotiable that I will be that present father, that I will be there at every step of the way, that I will give him the direction, that I'll give him the advice, that I'll be that support, that shoulder to cry on, that shoulder to laugh, everything, right? They're everything. It's I'm that everything. And that was, that's something I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of him. And, he's growing too. He's a bit teenage now. Where does time fly?
It really does. And I'm glad, Wesley, that you moved to the present tense, because a lot of the time then when you were talking about your son, yes, talking in the past tense, I was a good father. I was doing, looking after him. I was giving him a safe, but you still are. And you should be, congratulated and recognized, I think, for that. Because it's not an easy job to be a parent. I can tell you from my own experience, it's not easy. And I don't know anyone who has had an easy job as a parent, but not a lot of people talk about it. And today we're going to talk a little bit about being a professional and a parent, particularly a professional and a father. And I guess not to labor on the past too much, but you said that when you decided to call off the wedding, it was your decision. It sounds like you made the decision, but it was a mutual decision in the end.
Yes. Yeah. I think, when I made the decision, and I came back and, I said those words, that one truth, one sentence, one moment of freedom, right? I think it was just a knowing between us that it wasn't right. So there wasn't this big fallout and this big argument and what have you. It was, as I said, very, very amicable. And I think actually it probably solidified my decision because it was that. Okay, yeah. That kind of, it's like if two people love each other, it wouldn't be like that, would it? It wouldn't happen in the first place. So yeah, it was that. And you're right, coming back on, even more so, for me, being a single father, being a present father is just second nature now. It is me. It's what I'm known for. It's my story. It's what I bring to the table. And it's something that, has defined my life. And you have to look back on your life and you have to look at the stories. Like Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots by looking back. And it's very important to be able to look back. And when you get to a certain age in life, or you're able to look at those defining realizations, those aha moments, those stories, and you're able to connect the dots and you're able to see the rhythm, the meaning, the purpose of what you're here. And, something very important, that you actually take the meaning out of it, because there is a story and a message or a messenger in every story that you've lived, in every challenge, in every opportunity, in every negativity, whatever it is. Ultimately, it's all a perception, and it's just super important to be able to connect the dots to see what those defining moments are and what they taught you. I now use this as a natural progression of my journey, of what I now bring. I haven't gone through all these hardships just to not use them as purpose, to not be able to help others lead, scale, become a better person, build a better business, become a better father. That's my mission now. And I feel very grateful that I've gone through what I've gone through, and I've had the clarity, and I've got the courage, and I've now got the freedom to be able to bring that to many, many people.
So you mentioned that when I'm going to call it the wedding drama without wanting to put to remove any meaning from it at all. But when this happened, this separation, you mentioned you had a growing business that, is it the same business as you're doing now, or is that one in the past as well?
It was the same line. Yeah. It was a previous business, but we were in a growth phase. It was a challenge. Look, look, there are two things, and being one of the founders, one of the directors of the business, I had flexibility, right? It wasn't as though it's kind of twofold. It's a double-edged sword, because being a founder of a growing business also brings its challenges, huge challenges, right? People rely on you. People look to you. You are the leader and you need to perform. You also need to make the big decisions. And you've got everyone's wages to be able to pay at the end of every month. You've got a culture to build, and people look up to you. People looked up to me. So it was really important that I was that person. I was that leader. I was spearheading the growth, and I had a lot of people look up to me, and a lot of people focus on me and come to me for advice. So that was one stage. But on the flip stage, I also had probably a bit more freedom if I needed to leave at 4:00, or if I didn't need to go in one day. But I always needed to make up. See, what people don't realize is, okay, maybe I left at 4 there, but I was working at the weekends, or I was working at midnight. When my son was sleeping, when I put him to bed, where was I? I was back there catching up, doing the graft, working hard to be able to get to where we need to be able to build the business that we need to build, to be able to support the people around and deliver an outstanding service. So, it was kind of twofold, I would say.
And how that time, and probably still now, did you separate personal struggles you were having and the events that were going on in your private life versus, running a growing business as an entrepreneur, people relying on you and the stresses of that? Was business an escape for you from what was happening in your personal life and vice versa, or was it complemented each other?
Yeah, it's never an escape. You have to complement them each other in this day and age, and especially in this new digital era but since COVID, it's very much been a merging of the two. The two very much link in personal and business. It isn't just one over the other. One doesn't earmark over the other, but it's very important to be able to distinguish the two. When I was at work, you have to compartmentalize what was going on. You have to be professional, but also you have to have empathy. You have to have compassion. You have to be able to understand and recognize and allow and provide awareness. So for me, I was able, and going back to all of my challenges that I've lived throughout my life, I have just over a number of years been able to know the decision that I want to make, compartmentalize that decision, and to be able to box it off. And I do that because I make decisions from values, right? I know what my values are. I'm very clear on what I bring to the table. I'm very clear on the life that I want to live, on what I want to give back, on the legacy that I want to leave. And I think if you operate from that place, from very clear values, then every decision that you make is really merged around that. So that it's a decision based on goodness, right? It's a decision based on wanting to give back, wanting to be a better person, wanting to level up, but also being able to make those hard decisions. So for me, I was able to compartmentalize. I was able to make the decision, compartmentalize it. Yes, there were tough days. Of course there's tough days, right? A phone call comes in from the ex, or like the school phones me and I have to pick my son up because he's banged his head, or yes, there are things that happen, but don't overthink it. It's like people rush in their heads to overthink everything. And you don't need to. All you need to do, and I'm sure we'll come on to this, is take small, simple steps, is to break it down. Don't look at this huge, big plan. Yes, we need a vision, and I call it a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? You've got the vision of your life, right? And you know that, but then break everything else down, 1% every day, remove the friction, and measure the movement. And I think by doing that, you then it's like bite-sized chunks. You make it more edible. You make it more manageable. It's not like eating this huge steak. It's taking a small bite, and then we move on to the next. So by doing that, that's the way that I've managed it. And I'm very consistent. I'm very disciplined. I've learned to be able to compartmentalize. I believe in conscious leadership, in resonating and understanding others' challenges and resonating with that. And then it's being a good person, living by good values, core values, and going out into the world day by day, resetting, going again. Like life's tough, right? Don't go out into the world thinking that it's all going to smell of roses. It's tough out there. Life is tough. It's hard. And I say, what hard are you going to choose?
Now, you've said, on that note, you've talked about courage starts the journey and consistency builds the life. I think that's what you might have been referring to then, but tell us more about that. What does it mean in practice for someone who feels stuck or overwhelmed?
Yeah, so courage is what gets you moving, right? It's the ignition. But consistency, that's what builds the freedom. It's the engine. So courage is the ignition, consistency is the engine. So it's when someone feels stuck or overwhelmed, they usually think that they need to make this massive change. But they don't. In reality, all they need to do is make one honest decision, then they need to follow it with one simple action. So, and then you repeat that long enough to rebuild trust with themselves. It's like launching that thing or that product or having that conversation or that promise. Courage is the first moment of truth, but the point where you say, I can't, it's the point where you say, I can't keep living like this. But consistency is what follows it. That's what's showing up every day. It's keeping that promise. It's saying I'll spend 30 minutes a day with my son or daughter, doing that 1 hour of deep work in the morning, going to the gym 3 times a week. And it's doing it every day. See, most people wait for motivation, right? But motivation is emotional. Consistency is structural. And that's why I teach my clients and my son to build systems, to build routines, to build accountability, to build structure. Because when you can't rely on motivation, you can still rely on rhythm, on consistency. So courage opens the door. It gets you started. It's that moment of truth, let's call it. But consistency allows you to walk through it. One creates movement, the other creates meaning.
And that's very interesting because that goes into life and it goes into business and life, often merge for those in professions or professionals. So just catch on. I was thinking about the relationship challenge that you had. So you mentioned that you got together, there was pregnancy after 6 months. And for the next 4.5 years, you broke up, you got back together. So there was indecision. There was definitely indecision there. And it wasn't until you finally made the big decision that you then and then went, okay, this is the big decision, and you've built the consistency since then.
Yeah.
I guess, at what point does indecision have to stop? Because this is something I struggle with, being indecisive about what am I going to do today. Sometimes, no matter how much your to-do list is overwhelming, or you've got so many meetings, you've kind of got to do them. But at some point, you do have to make a decision and say, this is what I'm going to do today. This is obviously a very simplified version of what you're referring to. But at what point does the indecision stop?
What's going to move the needle the most, right? And I think the way that you structure your days, your weeks, your months, your quarters, your year is very important. So, I would say theme your year. What is the theme of the year? What do I want to get out of this year? And it doesn't need to be huge. It needs to be one short sentence. When I moved over to Dubai, I had a theme. It was clarity, credibility, and cash. They were the 3 things, and my focus is solely on that. That is what I decided for the first 6 to 12 months of being in a new country, not coming here with anything. I came here with a son. No ready-made network, no safety net, nothing. And I said to myself, that's my theme. That's what I'm coming out. I have a clear, bigger picture. And then you break it down. So, even breaking it down to weekly, let's call it. On a Sunday night, Sunday evening, sit down. What do I need to get done? What are my top 3 things that I want to focus on this week? If I can get to the end of the week and I can say that I've done these 3 things, I'm good to go. So it's breaking it down and making sure that you achieve those top 3. And then every day breaking it down even further to say, what one thing do I need to do today to achieve those 3 things? And that's the start of it. That's the basis of it in its rawest form. And then you have to time block. So time blocking your calendar, right? I know that firstly, I'm up at 5 a.m. I've got my personal development time between 5 and 6. That's meditation, water, up, ready, and I'm in the gym by 6. I have my gym session, 6 till 7, 7:15. I'm back home, showered, ready, breakfast, and I'm deep work 8 till 10. So it's breaking your day down. I don't do meetings prior to 10, or I try not to. It's non-negotiable times. And that's the basis of it. Time blocking, key milestones or key goals that you want to achieve weekly, daily, yearly, and then you can break it even down into quarters, quarterly rocks. It's similar to kind of what we do in business. What I teach in business coaching is similar to that. In business, you should have a 1, 3, 5, 10-year plan. And the 10-year plan is as I said, I call it a vivid vision, or a big, hairy, audacious goal. And that's the vision. But then you have a yearly plan. What do I want to get done this year? What are the priorities that if we achieve this year, we will be a happy business? And then you tie quarterly rocks to that 1-year vision. And that's what the team will work towards. Right. We're going to increase our customer success retention or customer success rate, or we're going to reduce our churn rate, or we're going to hit X turnover this quarter. Qualitative and quantitative data. It's important to be able to consolidate the two. I call it North Star, South Star, your North Stars, your 2 North Stars. And it's important to then have the team working towards that, so that everyone is singing in the same direction. You're all pulling in the same direction. You're all rowing in the same direction, rather than having one team row this way and you're just going to go around in circles. So it's the same in life. You apply the same methodology, the same process in your life. So you have to be disciplined. And in a world that we live in today, which is a very fast-paced world, it means you even need to be more disciplined with it, and you have to break it down, and you have to know what you're gunning for and what you're aiming for, and that is why I would say do those recommendations.
How do these go for both big and small decisions? In this episode so far, you've talked about 3 major decisions in your life, with choosing to live with your mother, choosing not to get married, and then relocating to Dubai with your son. And you have your reasons for all those, and you mentioned the 3 C's for moving to the UAE. Do you apply these ideas and this mantra, I guess, across every single decision you make, day to day?
Yeah, it happens a lot quicker. When you've been through so many circumstances, and this comes from experience. When you've been through so many circumstances and situations, you just learn to know what you need to do very quickly. So on the smaller decisions, a lot of it kind of works on gut instinct, on just a knowing. Again, I come back though to the values, because I've ingrained my values so much that all my decisions are based around those. And every decision that I come to are based around making sure that I'm making the right decision on who I am and where I want to be, but also on the people around me. I'm always looking for win-wins. We have to work together in this environment, in this world. And just going out there saying, screw everyone else, I'm focusing on me, it doesn't work. But you are also number one. You have to protect yourself as well. So it's that delicate fine line of knowing what's right for you, aligning them with your values, but also knowing if you can, and make it right for others as well, then you're going to feel so much better about it. And you're going to get people on your side, and you're going to improve the world, and you're going to improve someone else's world as well. So yes, ultimately I do go through a similar process, but it's a lot quicker. It's not sit down and again, I come back, and sometimes a lot of the time I'll sleep on it. If it's a decision that I don't need to make straight away then and there, and you don't need to be forced into decisions. You can calmly say, I've listened to everything you said, and I appreciate everything that you've said, and I need to go away and take 24 hours. And in my view, that's perfectly acceptable to do that. But also sleeping on it, I find, makes a big difference, because the world, the day can catch up with you and you're in frantic mode and you're making all of these meetings and these decisions and things are coming at you, and then your son's calling you, and then you've got to run over to this and you've forgotten to do that. Then you've got an email come in and you've got a phone call come in and someone else wants a piece of you here. It's like, by the end of the day, your head's exploding. You're not thinking with clarity.
No, it's with emotion, aren't you?
Thinking with emotion, right? And also you're probably thinking with, I can't be bothered with this, and oh my God, this is all too much, and you're overwhelmed. And that's the worst place you want to be making decisions from. Get a good sleep. Don't sit there churning it out, pushing harder. I've found the best thing is get an early night. Wake up early the next day and get back on it, but get an early night that night. Wake up, and I've trained myself now that the next day just, you reset, you're good to go. And then that thing that you were thinking about the day before that seemed ever so daunting and overloading is now like, oh, of course, that's what I need to do. Then we go.
How do you sleep, though? How do you sleep when you've got so much on your mind? Because most people I know, when they've got a lot on your mind and you have to make a big decision and you have to sleep on it, you can't actually sleep. You really...
Look, I when my head hits the pillow, I'm out in literally 10 seconds flat. I've kind of always been like that. But I've coached a lot of people who haven't.
Yes.
And look, it's very important to be able to, and the way that I coach people is, it's very important to unpack and leave the baggage at the door. So you have to have a wind down routine, a night routine and a morning routine. It's so important. They are your resets. Your night is the most important time, right? You've got 8 hours to marinate in your subconscious. Whatever you go to bed with, whatever sits in your mind over that 8 hours, that's what you're telling the universe. That's what you're telling the world that you want. So don't go to bed with some crazy thoughts. Unpack it. And that unpacking means winding down. It means stopping, turning phone off an hour, 2 hours before bedtime. It means if you've got a family, having family time. It means relaxing. It means reading a book. It means having maybe some meditation or visualization in the evening, and also journaling. Being able to get your thoughts out onto paper is a game changer for a lot of people. It doesn't need to be anything big, even if it's 2-3 lines, even if it's 2, 3, 4 minutes. Sometimes it will be 20 minutes because you've got so much. Get it out. And then you've got to leave it. And then it's going, and then, depending if you, personally, I find reading a book can definitely send you to sleep. Even if it's a great book, it will still send you to sleep. And also maybe some meditation music using the apps, I think can work really well as well. But the wind down routine, and if people struggle to sleep, it might be difficult to begin with, but you've got to, like I said earlier, consistency. You've got to stay at it. You don't go to the gym, right? You don't go to the gym for a week and then suddenly give up and say, oh, I haven't got the body that I want because, I've been for 5 days, 7 days now, and it just hasn't happened. Like, it's going to take months, years to get where you want to be. Consistency is key. Be disciplined with it. Commit, be non-negotiable. If you're going to commit to journaling, commit to journaling. Don't do it for 5 days and say, oh, then I can't be bothered anymore. Oh, it hasn't worked. Well, it's not going to work after 5 days. Give it 500 days and then come and talk to me. That's the type of mindset that you need to be in. And you need to find what works for you. Different courses work for different people. Different things work for different people. So find what works for you. For me and the people and my clients that I've coached, journaling has worked really well. Just 5 minutes, notepad by, sit down. Meditation has worked really well, even with an app, 5 minutes of meditation. No phone worked really well as well. For me, they're the kind of top three ones. And you know what? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Always remember that.
I think with a bit of sleep, everything is okay.
It's never as bad as it appears, Chris. It's never as bad as it appears. I can guarantee you, after a good night's sleep and the restorative period, the restoration that it provides to you, get up the next day and go at it again, and get into that routine. And that for me is the kind of mindset that you need to be in.
So tell us all a bit more about the types of clients that you work with at the moment. You mentioned at the beginning that you've really used your personal experiences in life to conduct the work that you do, and you're a coach.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so I'm a business coach and life coach. In business, I coach businesses, founders, entrepreneurs, growing businesses, a variety of different vertical markets. My kind of niche, I would say, is project-based construction. And I work with founders to be able to provide structure, strategy, systems, and leadership within their business. So I use my 26 years, 5 businesses experience working in every facet of that business. I've started 26 years ago on the tools in my first business, right? So I've been that guy. I know what it's like to be there. I've worked in operations. I've worked in delivery. I've worked in sales. I've worked in account management. I've obviously been in the boardrooms making the hiring and firing and the big decisions, the big calls. So I've seen every facet of business, and I'm now got that business acumen to be able to bring that into clients, to hold that founder's hand. Founders that are growing a business and they are struggling, they're lonely at the top. What way do I turn? What decision should I make? Should I hire this people? Is it the right decision? Because founders are normally visionaries,
yes,
right? And then they're not necessarily doers. Whereas I have this ability to be very hands-on, to be in the trenches. I've been there, operations. I'm very disciplined, and I enjoy that as well. But I'm also a bit of a visionary as well. I know where I want to go. And so I have this kind of unique, eclectic mix of being able to understand what founders are wanting to do and where they're wanting to go, because I've been that. But also to get in the weeds as well, to roll up my sleeves and get it done. So for me, it's kind of working with founders who are wanting to scale, who are potentially struggling to know what that next step is, who are burnt out, who don't have the structure, strategy, vision, systems in place. I can bring digital platforms, I can bring structure, I can bring processes, I can hold their hand and be their confidant and their guide to be able to go through that growth phase. So that's kind of what I bring to businesses in the UK, UAE, worldwide. And with life coaching, for me, it's very much about awareness, alignment, courage, action, discipline. I call it my Thrive operating system, and it's traits, habits, resilience, inner self, vision, and effort. I find that everyone's going through something different. People start at different places and they go at different paces. People are struggling with something, whether it be family, whether it be relationships, whether it be business, whether it be wanting to run a marathon, whether it be health, fitness, mindset, overthinking, imposter syndrome. There's a wide range, right? So for me, I run people through my clarity, courage, freedom process. And that's the pain, process, and promise that I deliver through that. And I believe that a lot of people just need, firstly, to be heard. A lot of people struggle because they feel like they're burdening people. I can't talk to family because they don't get it. Friends, I feel like I'm burdening them by talking to them. I can't take it to work because, I can't show that I'm struggling and I'm weak. So a lot of people are kind of in this position where like, well, I don't know where to turn. And I find that I've walked the walk, right? I can talk the talk and I've walked the walk. I've been through all of these situations, circumstances, challenges. I'm empathetic. I get it. I believe I'm a good listener. I can understand what people are going through, and I can be that confidant, that guide to be able to unpack it. And it's so great because I can take that bird's eye view. I'm out the weeds. I'm not in the weeds with you. I bring sound experience, knowledge, guidance. I'm aligned. I do believe in mind, body, soul alignment as well. And I bring that kind of alignment to individuals to be able to, it's going to be okay. You don't need to worry. Yes, you're struggling with X, Y, or Z at the moment, but we're going to unpack it. We're going to go through this set structure. We're going to install discipline. We're going to get objectives. We're going to build a 90-day plan, and I'm going to keep you accountable for it. And it's that hand-holding process that I found has worked really, really well. And also that resonance, right? Because that kind of coach-client relationship, you need to get on with the person. And a lot of people have said to me that they like working with me because I've been there. You know, like I've got those lived experiences, and I'm kind of that beacon of saying it can work. You can get through it. You can survive, but not just survive, you can thrive off the back of it. And that's what I'm very passionate about, and what I help my clients, high performers, achieve.
So you mentioned you do both business coaching and life coaching. Is it often a crossover? Is often the same people basically are looking for business coaching and life coaching because they're joined together and inseparable?
Exactly that, right? And you know, to build a great business, you need to be a great founder. And to be a great founder, you need a great business. They go hand in hand. So the people I generally work with is high performers, founders, entrepreneurs, you know, who have either got to a stage where they can't take it anymore. They're at that burnout point, that busting point. They can't accept it. They don't want to accept it anymore. And they recognize that something needs to happen, and there is more to life, and they want more from life. And they need that guidance and help. So yes, I do find that the two go hand in hand, very much so. And that's why that's what I've lived, right? I'm passionate about building better businesses, and I'm passionate about building stronger people. So for me, merging the two together and being able to coach a founder while building a business, I mean, it's a win-win.
So we met a couple of weeks ago at a fractionals event, and I remember everyone had to put out an ask, and your ask was to meet fellow single fathers. And I have to admit, I've been scratching my head a bit about that because in the UAE or in the Middle East, I haven't met that many single fathers. I met some single mothers, but I haven't met that many single fathers. So that is, you know, perhaps there are quite a few out there, and they're hiding away.
Come and find me.
I was going to say, yeah, please. Here's the platform. Come and find Wesley. We'll put his details in the podcast details. But I think demographically, you work with both men and women, but you have worked with men particularly a lot, I believe.
Yeah, exactly that. And like you said, I work with all, but look, it's a different demographic working with women or women's groups or individuals. So there's a different direction to it, but ultimately it's the same. It's the same outcome, right? We all want the same outcome.
Same outcome, different approach.
So same outcome, different approach. Exactly that. But yes, the demographic that I have generally worked with is fathers. Males, I would say. And you know, obviously with my experience with with single fatherhood, with founderhood, if you can call it that, and combining the two, I think puts me in a very unique position to be able to help founders and fathers, to be able to help fathers who are going through challenges, to, you know, be able to offer a safe space for them to be able to open up about their successes and their struggles. And, you know, I'm passionate about building a community for founders and fathers, which is a safe space for, for successes, struggles, pain and purpose, which is really good. And yeah, you know, obviously you mentioned the fractional as well. I'm working with Fractional Dubai as a fractional COO to be able to implement the kind of the business side, right? The, the structure, the strategy, the systems, the processes, because I've done that all through my life in all of my businesses.
Now, I do want to talk about men in the context of the professional world, in the context of the experiences that you've lived and that you've then spoken about a lot with the people that you deal with. So from my side, I think many men carry an invisible pressure. I certainly feel it. You have that I guess that instinct that you want to provide for your family, for your partner, for your employees, if you're a founder or a business owner, You want to protect the same people, but ultimately your family, and it probably does come down to your values as well. So you want to provide, protect, and be the anchor for your families and I think probably for your employees. What patterns have you seen amongst the men that you worked with, and I guess particularly fathers?
Yeah, great question. Look, there's a phrase I often use: the silent load of the modern man. And most professional fathers I work with are carrying probably 3 invisible weights. Providing let's call it the provider pressure. And when I say that, I mean they feel their worth is measured by output, by revenue, by results, by reputation. The unspoken fear is, if I slow down, it all falls apart. So there's this pressure that I've got to provide, right? And as a man, that's quite very strong. And, you know, that's been ingrained into us over God knows how long. The second one I would say is kind of the perfection trap, let's call it. They believe that they have to hold everything together to be strong, calm, and in control, even when they're internally running on complete empty. And it's that vulnerability feels like a failure. And I would say that another one is to do around presence, that kind of that presence paradox, let's call it. And they desperately want to be more present, but, you know, let's say at dinner, at bedtime, on weekends, but they don't know how to switch off because their performance mindset keeps churning, keeps constantly going. They haven't got that off switch. So they're physically there, but mentally elsewhere. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. And it's that, you know, you're talking to someone and you're just not there in the mind. And you're doing that with your family. You know, and I watched, actually, funny, this is a good one. I watched a film not too long ago, Click, with Adam Sandler, is it?
Yes.
And yeah. And basically, he's able to fast forward his life. But when he fast forward all through that period, he's not there. His mind's not there. He's just wandering around like a zombie. And I think that is a prime example of being there, but not being present. So what I see most is that they, you know, that these men don't lack love or intention or the want. They just lack the structure and the space. So, you know, when we build systems, even simple ones, they create clarity, they create boundaries, they create rhythm, and they just, you know, they kind of discover something powerful that being present doesn't mean doing less. It just means being more aligned. And I think that's the biggest shift. When they stop asking, how do I keep up, and start asking what actually matters, there's this shift away from, I don't need to be on that hamster wheel constantly. I just need to know what matters to me. And that takes intentional decision. That takes you sitting down and being intentional with where you want to spend your time, because time is precious. Time is attention. And it's the attention. That's the thing. You know, attention is gold. You know, where you spend your attention, you're never going to get it back. And not only is attention time, but it's actually who you're spending it with.
I think clarity, from what you've just said, it's the other word that sticks out for me is clarity, and trying to get that clarity, because for a lot of us, we don't have that clarity of what is important and where to spend our time. And it does take somebody else, an external resource, someone else outside your family, outside your work, to help you to define that clarity and kind of define what's important, because you can't see the wood through the trees, I think. And this is just from my own personal experience, but also from what I've seen of 20 years working in professional services, where it's pretty intense. You know, you generally working with lawyers in particular, they're pretty specialized people. They generally have similar personalities, and they're very good with black and white. They're very good with rules. But when things start to get a bit fuzzy, not so good. And so when it comes to things like marketing, which are not necessarily, you can't necessarily put a figure on it, an ROI on it straight away, it gets a bit fuzzy. But the same in managing life, I think. So, what advice would you give to professional men who are feeling this overwhelm and this inability to see the clarity and see the wood through the trees and a few in the silent load?
Yeah.
Big question, I know.
We just coming. So going back to your clarity comment. Agree 100%. Clarity is where it all starts, and for me, the clarity is starts with realizations. It starts with aha moments. It starts with looking back in your life, connecting the dots, and actually scratching the surface of who you are, and where you've come from and why you're here. I always say, where have you come from? Why are you here? And where are you going? 3 big questions. You answer those 3 questions and you're definitely on your way. So clarity is definitely the start. And sorry, your next question was...
I think around professionals, around dealing with how do you get the clarity as a professional? You have certain ways of thinking of things. You have a lot of pressure. There's no doubt about that, because you've got clients you're working with. If you're a doctor, a surgeon, what you do has to be very precise. If you're a lawyer, what you have to do is very precise. There's a lot of pressure on that, and you can't always just switch off that professional hat and switch into to regular family life mode.
Yeah. So being present is about it isn't just about being around more. It's about being available when you're around. And I think you make a very valid point about how do I make that happen? And I think, again, for me, I come back to kind of the routines that we spoke about earlier. I'm very much a believer that you need to create rhythm, you need to create discipline, you need to create routines, you need to create accountability. So for me, hard at work, have a routine, have a morning routine first. Get up and have a routine that you go through, whether that's meditation, whether that's going for a walk, whether it's reading a book, whether, I do a lot of my best work in the mornings. Now and again, I will get up in the morning because I will have huge amounts of clarity in the morning. All those things that I've been thinking about, the projects that I've been thinking about, the decisions that potentially I've been sitting on not too long. And for me, sometimes I wake up and I just got this huge clarity. So sometimes you have to pivot, but ultimately I have a routine. Have a morning routine enables you to be able to be consistent with it. So firstly, do that. Time blocking, again, I mentioned it earlier, but I come back to that. Very much about being intentional with your time. Where are you spending your time? And are you spending it where you're going to move the needle the most for you, not someone else? And again, it's very important, because if you're a founder of a business, you own a business, then it's super important that you're very intentional with where you spend your time on the growth of the business and taking the people on the journey. And that's why you have to have a vision. That's why you have to have a very clear vision. That's why you then need to break it down into quarterly milestones so that everyone buys into it and everyone understands where we're going and why we're going and what we're looking to achieve. And then there are goals set to that, attached to that, KPIs. And then if you're working for a business, then again, you're super passionate about the business and you have certain targets that you need to hit. But, you have to draw a line. You have your life as well. And I think this is what a lot of people struggle with, is getting to that place of, well, what is that line? And I've coached people and worked with people before where that line's been crossed constantly by their business, by their company, and they're not treated how they should be treated. And then that's an altogether new decision that you need to make. Do you want to stay or do you want to go? And again, we come then back to the courageous decision. Are you going to live a life? I call it, and this may sound a little bit morbid, but I call it the deathbed perspective. If you're at a junction, put yourself on your deathbed, looking back on your life, with the ghosts of the decisions that you didn't make standing around you, looking at you, saying, you didn't do it. You didn't make that decision. You didn't change your life. You've got all of that inside you, all of that goodness, all of those skills, that talent inside you. But you didn't make that decision. You stayed where you were. And now you can't go back and change it. So again, it's altogether a different decision, but it's again another courageous decision that you need to make. So there's that. And then there's also, in the evenings, unpacking. There's that wind down routine. And whether that's a decompression ritual or that's a no phone when you get home kind of routine, it's being super intentional and sitting down with yourself and going, my family is the most important thing to me. And when I go home, I am going to make sure that I am present, not just in physicality, but in mind. My phone is away. I'm going to have that decompression time, whether that's sitting in your car for 10 minutes outside your house, clearing, turning the phone, clearing your mind, having a mantra. These little things, they do work. I am going to be present. I'm going to be here for my son. I'm going to be here for my daughter. As soon as I walk through that door, the only thing that matters to me is what is in front of me. Something like that, some sort of mantra that refocuses the mind, and it's doing that on a daily basis.
So what I've heard a lot from this is it is actually about spending time by yourself, or for yourself, I should say, and then being intentional with how you spend it with your family. But you need to do the both. To be intentional with the family, to have that quality time, you actually need to have that 10 minutes to decompress in the morning, or 10 minutes to yourself to do some meditation or do something, and the same in the evening, and then you can be present to switch, I guess.
Exactly that. Self-care. Self-care is healthcare. There you go. That's what I believe, because if you're not at your best performance for yourself, how are you going to perform for others? And we're in this constant world where it's go, 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 do, think, move, act. And it's like, presence is about attention. And you've got to decide where you want to put your attention. And if your biggest priority is your child, is your wife, is your husband, then that's what you need to do. You don't need more hours. You just need fewer distractions. You need to make conscious, non-negotiable decisions. Don't negotiate with yourself about it. Now, there may be fallout from it. And you have to, I would say, mitigate the downside and protect the downside and maximize the upside. So there may be changes that need to be made in your life, but you're going to live your life knowing that you should have done something different and didn't, or you're going to live your life with saying, I did it, I made that decision, and I decided what my what my non-negotiables were. And that for me is the most important thing. You've got to set your non-negotiables. You've got to make your decision. You can't sit on the sideline. And you've got to do that. That takes you to do that. That takes you to decide. If you're not happy in a relationship, change it. If you're not happy in your job, change it. If you're not happy with how you're performing, change it. If you're not happy with your health routine, change it. If you're not happy with the gym routine, change it. You've got the choice to change. No one else. The power is with you. You hold it. Now you can make all the excuses that you want in the world. Well, I can't do this. Well, I haven't got time. Who decides where you put your time?
Yeah, I guess what I would say to that, and you're right, is there's that paradox that I find and I see with myself and with others is I need to spend this time because you want your family is the most important thing. But the harder you work, especially as an entrepreneur, the harder you work, the more chance you have of making that money and then investment that you can invest into your family and provide for your family. So there's that underlying need, I guess, to provide for yourself, but also provide for your family with that paradox of I actually need to spend some time with my family as well and make sure that I'm present and spending valuable time with them. Finding that balance is very, very difficult, and I get it. You've got to be intentional about it, and I guess that's when we need to come and speak to people like you or an external resource. You can just say objectively, this is where the line is.
Exactly that, right? Because you're always going to talk yourself out of it. Like you just said a perfect example, right? You want to grow the business. You grow the business for legacy. You grow the business for your family. You grow the business to provide more, to live a better life. And we're all here to do that, right? Like the whole purpose of life is to grow, is to evolve, is to create. We weren't given imagination and the ability of the higher faculties that we own within inside ourselves to just sit here and watch TV. No. but you have to use it intentionally. And this is the big thing, you have to make sacrifices. Now, you mentioned earlier about, the wanting to spend more time with the family, your growing business, you're a founder. Now, look, there have been sacrifices that I've needed to make as well, right? Time with my son to grow the business. And there are times that I'd probably look back on and said, yeah, maybe I should have spent that time with my son. But you know what the beautiful thing is that tomorrow's another day and we can get up and we can change it. And every day we're iterating it. And like I said before, I think for me, it's if you've got someone external, then you've got the ability to be held accountable for it. And you've got the ability to be able to have someone externally to look and say, yeah, let's amend it here. Like you should take that time off. And again, have you set your business up correctly? Are you, and I say, automate it, delegate it, or eliminate it.
So Wesley, we talked a lot about being intentional and about making sacrifices. So I guess, making sacrifices, being intentional about making those sacrifices. How have you seen that pride and fear in men have prevented them from really doing this in a clear way, to go back to the clarity point?
Yeah, I mean, look, for a lot of men, especially high performers, asking for help feels like admitting failure, right? And pride is often a mask of pain. We tell ourselves we're protecting others when really we're protecting our ego. Because if we're admitted we're struggling, it threatens the one thing that we've built our identity around, and that is competence. So I suppose most men are raised to be problem solvers, not problem sharers. It's a good way of putting it. So when life gets hard, they retreat into silence. They don't say anything. They convince themselves that they'll fix it at a later date when things calm down. But you know what? Things will never calm down. Something else will happen. Something else will occur. There will be something else that comes. So the fear isn't about looking weak to others. It's about confronting weaknesses within inside ourselves. And to a lot of people, that's quite terrifying because we've always been rewarded for control. I'm the man, I'm in control. I know what to do. I know the direction to go. And the family's looking to you to make the right decisions. And you know what? We're never always going to make the right decisions. Never always going to make the right call. But it's standing up and saying, well, at least I made a call. At least I made a decision. Again, we come back to being intentional about what you want in life, knowing your values. Because if you live life by that every day, if you're very clear about what is aligned to you, and you are with people around you that are aligned to you, then people are going to understand your decisions. We're not always going to make the right decisions, but making a decision, even the wrong decision, is better than making no decision. So I've learned, probably both personally and through my clients, it's that real strength begins when the mask drops. Because courage isn't pretending to have it all together. It's being honest enough to say, I don't know right now. And once men understand that vulnerability is not the opposite of strength, but it's the doorway to it, that's when real transformation starts. Being vulnerable. And look, I'm not saying that you need or you should walk into your business tomorrow and say to your broadcast to your company and to your senior management team that you haven't got it all together, that you're struggling, that that you're in this really dark place, because that could potentially be quite detrimental to your business, to your employees who are looking up to you, who need a leader, right? They need someone to look up to and to lead, to follow. But I am an advocate of getting a coach. I am an advocate of having these conversations with someone that you trust, someone that can guide you, someone that's walked the walk, someone that is able to listen first, understand, guide, recommend, and be that confidant, hold your hand through that process. So yeah, there's a bit to unpack there. Definitely a problem shared is a problem halved. Speak to someone who's been there, and someone who's not in the thick of it, because there is help out there. There is guidance out there. The first step on a journey of 1,000 miles is putting your hand up, being aware that you need to make that step, and then actually taking action to do it.
So that person you've just described obviously describes you quite well as that role. And but how have you managed to get people, men, to drop that mask with you and trust you? Because very much, I think, from a male pride point of view, from what's instilled from us from birth, what's instilled from us probably from the founding of time, is that men are the providers, the hunters, the hunter-gatherers, right? And, you know, as much as we could be facetious about it, it's still there. It's still there in society, in Western society, and probably, in Eastern society as well, I guess. So
definitely,
there is that protective barrier that most of us men put up, and it's a self-protection barrier, but it's also a barrier from other people. How do you build that trust? How do you get men to drop that and just kind of let go?
Resonate. To emotionally be able to resonate with people. You know, I have a gift where I'm a very empathetic listener. I can talk from experience, and I can understand, right? I can be philosophical as well as objective, as well as emotionally connected. And I found one of my gifts is being able to do all of that, and people to trust me and to believe in me. And, you know, that's probably through the experiences that I've been through, that people have seen that I don't just talk the talk, I've walked the talk. And that for me is a critical thing. So I found that people really, open up to me. And that is just through providing a safe space that people feel they can talk and be heard, and also get some actionable advice and direction off the back of it.
And then I guess you give them a game plan. That's the role of the coach, is to then give them that plan that we talked about, give them that clarity, help them to prioritize. The
5 Ps: proper planning prevents poor performance. And I love creating plans. You know, it's what I enjoy doing, and then keeping you accountable to it. That's the difference. That's what a coach does, is gives you the ability to be held accountable. So yes, the plan, the objectives, the goals, milestones, having a confidant, having a guide, and then taking the steps, and then being held accountable, and then celebrating, right? You know, like, that's the whole point. We're here is to actually celebrate the wins, learn from the so-called losses. But the losses are where the growth is, you know, the perceived bad, negative responses, feedback. That's actually where the biggest growth is. That's where people will, if used correctly, not going off into a spiral of, oh my God, it's all gone wrong. It's actually looking at it objectively and say, okay, cool. But, you know, it wasn't the outcome that I was expecting or wanting, but there is a message in here. So what is that message? What is the learning? Let's make sure we don't do it again. Let's pivot, and we get up and we go again.
So before we can do the celebrating, you mentioned very briefly earlier on, but we need to expand on it slightly, is the 3 S's. Now, let me make sure I get this right.
Yes.
Small, simple steps. Is that correct? Okay.
That's it. Simple.
So, and that allows you, I guess, if you are making these small steps that are simple, then you can have the celebrations. It allows you to have lots of mini celebrations, and that is good for the soul, right? It's good for all of us and encourages us. So tell us a bit more about these small, simple steps.
Yeah, it feeds the soul. That's what it does. Look, when you're overwhelmed, the mistake is thinking that you need to make this huge total life overhaul. You know, it's this impending doom and gloom, and oh my God, like I want to achieve this, and I want to get to this, and I want to have this in the bank, and I want this type of business, and I want this type of relationship. And it's like this total, you know, kind of life overhaul. It's like, oh my God, it's too much. You don't. You just need to do what I call small, simple steps. So small means start where you are. not where you wish you were. Don't try to fix your life in a weekend. Don't identify one behavior just identify one behavior that moves you forward to the man or woman that you want to be, or the business that you want. Maybe it's 10 minutes of focus time with your son or daughter. Maybe it's a single honest conversation you've been avoiding with your partner or with your business partner. But, like as an example with my son, it was like I gave the example of GCSEs. He got asked to do 20 hours of extra study each week for his GCSEs. Like, he turned to me, he was like, that's impossible. And I turned to him and I said, it is if you don't make a plan. So we sat down and we started with small. So instead of going at 20 hours, we said, well, let's do 12. Okay. He was looking at saying, okay, well, that's pretty good. I've just knocked off 8 hours there. Happy days. So you start small. You start it so it's manageable, enough to stretch you, but not break you. It's a good way of explaining. Next is simple. So it means to strip away the complexity and remove the friction. Most men hide behind over-planning. The color-coded calendar, the perfect routine. And then when you don't achieve it, you feel defeated. It breaks you. So keep it frictionless. If it takes more than 60 seconds to start, it's probably too big. So it just needs to be that simple, get it done, because what that does, it breeds momentum. Momentum is where you want to get, because once you build momentum, then you can build consistency, and then you never know what's going to happen around you. So keep it simple. And then finally, steps. It means movement over magnitude. Momentum creates belief. Belief creates consistency, and consistency creates change. So I tell my clients all the time, you don't need a massive strategy. You just need a repeatable rhythm. You need to make a small plan with small, simple steps, because progress isn't built in like huge leaps. It's built one step at a time. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So it's breaking it down, right? Making it super manageable and not thinking of that big future plan. Whilst it is good to have, like we come back earlier to that kind of vivid vision, the vision board of what you want your life to be, and maybe like the loving, caring kind of home, or the type of home, or, the type of car, or, whatever it may be. It's not just materialistic things. But that's the big vision, but it takes small, simple steps to get there, which is why we come back to being intentional, knowing what each year brings, what you want each year to bring, and then breaking it down into monthly, weekly, daily. Do you see it? It cascades down. But you've always got to have that cascade, which is why it's so important to do your yearly vision and goal setting. Because that sets the tone. Now, you don't have to just do it at the year end, but it's a good time, right? It's new year, new vision. And don't just do it like in January, do it before. So you actually go into it with meaning, but then you operate from it. Like I said, coming back to what we said earlier about that theme, that's a really good theme your year. And not big, like a big, huge paragraph about it, just small, simple. Because if you can just hit that, if you can hit micro moments, micro goals, hey, they turn into macro over time.
Brilliant. Oh, that's sage advice, Wesley. And I'm really grateful for all the advice you've given us today, the practical advice. For people who want to get in touch with you, who want to understand more about your services or just have a conversation, how can we get in touch?
Best way will be via LinkedIn. You can find me there, where I talk about business coaching, life coaching, personal development, leadership, growth. And on there is my Calendly link to book a free 30-minute call with me, where we can, unpack potential challenges and potential direction, where you are, where you've come from, where you are, and where you want to go. So that would be my go-to.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Wesley. Much appreciated. Thank you to our audience as well for sticking with us. It's just the time's flown by. So Wesley's given so much great advice, and reminded us that courage isn't just about bold action, but about facing the truth, leading with integrity, and showing up for the people that matter most, I think. So very grateful for that. For our audience, if you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with your network. We know how to get Wesley's details from the podcast description. But also, as always, for more insights and support, visit mohami.ae. Connect with me at CJA Consulting. I'm Chris Adams. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, stay intentional, and stay courageous. Thank you for joining us on Muhami Matters. If you found today's episode valuable, subscribe and connect with me to stay updated. Join me again soon as we continue to bring you credible insights, practical strategies, and trusted advice to empower your professional journey. I'm Chris Adams. Until next time, stay informed and stay empowered.